How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Now, I'll bet that virtually every one of our listeners is aware of that book. Yes. Not that you've read it, but is aware of it because it is an all-time classic. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Let me tell you why I chose this book. Because if you're going to develop a thriving practice, you are absolutely going to have a relationship-driven practice. Part of a thriving, a necessary ingredient of a thriving practice is that it's relationship-driven. And I'm going to suggest that if your practice isn't relationship-driven, it's not a thriving practice. Right. I'll go that bold as to say that. And if you really want to learn how to master the behavioral side of dentistry, if you're going to have a relationship-driven practice, you have to master behavioral skills. And that book, quite literally, is a guide that can help you master your behavioral skills. Now, I'm going to explain this. I have to explain this in such a way that makes sense. I've had clients over the years, Naren, that have said, you know, I'm just not strong on the behavioral sciences. I'm just not strong on the communication skills and behavioral science and relationship building. And I've said, but here's the good news. Even if you weren't born with those skills, you can learn those skills. And usually what I see when we're face to face is their eyebrows go up and it's like, you mean I can learn it? I said, absolutely. And one of the best ways to learn that is by reading the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Now that one's one of the few books that's not available on Audible, How to Win Friends and Influence People. So I actually have to read that book, How to Win Friends. It was written so long ago, they didn't have Audible capabilities back then, but it is as relevant today as it ever was. There's updated editions, updated intros and that sort of thing. But the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie is one right at the top of the list. We actually read this at Life Smiles as book club with all of my team members because we wanted our team members to develop, you know, their behavioral skills as well. And this would be a really good book to include in book club with your team members. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.